We'll now start to look at the legal structure that is typical in a project financing. Such structures can look unwieldy at the beginning. Transactions are not uncommon that have more than 25 agreements, but we will see that they are usually easier to understand once we understand the basic reasons behind them. Like before, we start by sketching the context, as this will help our understanding. In the previous videos, we've seen that the project finance we try to achieve several important objectives. We ring-fence, that is, we separate the project from its surroundings by concentrating it in a special purpose company. We stabilize the cash inflows by agreeing in offtake agreements that the buyer will be committed to pay the SPV a pre-agreed amount for a pre-agreed term. 3. We stabilize the cash outflows by agreeing fixed prices on all the investment contracts. And 4. We allocate as many risks as we can to other parties to further increase the predictability of the project cash flows for the SPV. The consequences of these actions is that the SPV has very stable and predictable cash flows. And this is attractive to lenders and investors. And that enables financing at the lowest possible cost. All these actions require legal agreements to be put in place. And all these agreements are signed simultaneously at the time of the legal closing. We also saw earlier that we try to standardize the process as much as possible. Even though projects may be very diverse in nature and in scale, this standardization makes it possible for project managers and other project specialists to move from one project to the other and to reuse their knowledge and experience. This is another reason to have a standardized structure. The fact that people of different backgrounds, they need to work together seamlessly in a project. And this is only possible if they can work in an organized and standardized way. So the first feature of a project legal structure is the project company, or the SPV, into which the project is concentrated. Because the SPV ring-fences the project, it serves as the proverbial fire door in case something goes wrong in the project. Everything outside the project is shielded from this. For example, bankruptcy from one of the stakeholders. The SPV needs to raise funding, a combination of debt and equity, to make the project investments possible. So there will be an equity subscription agreement and a project loan agreement with the SPV. Thereafter, the project company has the funds to invest, and it will sign an EPC or a turnkey agreement for the construction of a project asset, for example, a road or power plant. It wants to keep the power plant fully operating by signing an operation and maintenance or an O&M agreement. If the project company is constructing an infrastructure item, it will sign a concession agreement with the government authority that is mandated to organize that infrastructure. For example, the National Roads Authority if it's a road. This concession agreement will probably say that the project company must create the road according to certain minimum standards, and that it is to be opened by a pre-agreed date. The agreement states that the project company is permitted to operate the road for a certain number of years, say for 20 years. In that period, it may charge toll to the road users. We call such an arrangement a build, operate and transfer, or BOT. Transfer means that the road is transferred to the government after the operating term has ended. And this is often for no consideration. That's possible because by then the project company will have earned back its investment, plus an acceptable investment return through toll revenues. In this example, the project revenues are the toll fees paid by the road users, and when there is no offtake agreement with a particular buyer. That would be different if the project builds or operates a power plant that produces electricity, and then there would likely be an offtake agreement with a power utility. Another way for the project company to generate revenue in a PPP project may be that the government agrees in a concession agreement to pay a fixed price for the use of the asset, e.g., for example, the use of a road or a prison or a hospital. This usage payment then comes in place of the toll fees or other project sales. If the project needs raw materials to be able to operate, we will need to secure that delivery and the price. We do not want, then we will have an input supply agreement, for example for gas in a power plant. Here we have the basic ingredients for a project finance structure. The concentration of all project documents in the SPV has an added benefit. It creates a clear governance structure where the role and responsibility of each stakeholder is clearly defined beforehand. It creates the closest it can to an SPV functioning on an autopilot. Once the transaction has closed and all agreements are signed, each party goes to its predefined task. Of course, it's unrealistic to assume that it would be entirely possible to stay on autopilot. Unexpected events always happen. But through the predefined responsibilities and tried and tested dispute resolution mechanisms, we try to allocate the risks of these unexpected events to the parties that are best able to handle them, and we try to encourage that all parties are motivated to work towards an early solution. We saw that all agreements are signed simultaneously at the legal closing of the transaction. All these agreements form part of a transaction Bible. The transaction Bible consists of the three following parts. The financing documents, those are the agreements that relate to the project loans. The security documents, this is the range of documents that grant a certain security rights to the lenders, collateral rights. The security rights are typically a pledge on the SPV shares, bank accounts and project receivables like its revenues. The lenders could call these if the project company should default in its loans, and the value they bring helps to repay a part of the project loans. The project documents, these are the agreements that are put in place to stabilize the cash flows. They include an offtake agreement, an input supply agreement for raw materials, and EPC agreements for the building and the construction. We discussed some of these agreements before. Finally, the whole transaction Bible is brought together in a due diligence report that is prepared by a transaction legal advisor. This report describes the various agreements, their purpose in the transaction, and the anticipated governance and risk management situation that has been created. This legal due diligence report is very useful to get the overview of all the planning that has gone into the transaction. That gives us an overview of the legal structure and the reason it has been developed. In the next video, we'll look more closely at the project loan agreement, which contains some very useful features.